So that we classify diseases today largely on the basis of what causes it, and they classified them then on the basis of the symptoms. And so we wouldn't probably understand what they were saying anyway. He had an infirmity, so a weakness. And apparently he was mobility hindered. Fancy that. Couldn't get around very fast. He has my sympathy. Because of what he says in the next bit here, where he says, well, when the waters are troubled, I don't have anybody to help me get in, somebody to take me and pitch me into the water. And so before I can get down there, while I'm still getting my way down there, somebody else gets in first. So you have to think that he couldn't get around very well. Maybe he had to wear a boot on his foot. No, I don't think so. But and he had it, whatever it was, for 38 years. I have had this problem with my foot since my surgery for 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks Friday. And you know what? I'm ready to be done with it. I am so over this business of wearing goofy stuff on my foot and not being able to walk very well. I mean, it's been really nice. Leah's weighed on me hand and foot. I mean, you just couldn't have a better person to take care of you at all. And makes me think what a great idea it was, what we did 40 years ago this very day, and got married. Doesn't seem like it could have been that long. It seems like she's still my blushing bride, but we've been married 40 years, and she hasn't aged a bit. But she's great to have. She's taken really good care of me, but yeah, 8 weeks, I'm ready to be over this. And this poor fellow, I guess he didn't have anybody to take care of him very much, not to help him get in the water or anything. And if I'd been there like that, why, Leah would have just pitched me right in. She'd help me get in the water. He didn't have anybody to help him, and he had it for 38 years. Boy, that makes me seem like a piker for, 8 weeks is nothing, and it really is. It really is. Someday I'm going to look back on these 8 weeks, and it's going to be just some little blip that'll hardly be worth remembering in my past. 38 years is a long time. I mean, that's almost as long as Leah and I have been married. We've been married for 40, and he'd been that way for 38 years. For me, it seems short because it's been a lot of fun. For him, 38 years of having this infirmity was terrible. It's hard to imagine. You have to think he might have had seniority on everybody else there at the pool. I mean, 38 years to be there, and you have to think this wasn't something that he had from birth, and we're going to see something that Jesus says later leads me to believe. He didn't have this from birth. He got it later, and he'd had it for 38 years. He's not a young man at all. Wouldn't be a young man really by the standards of our day, and certainly not by the standards of that day. Wow. That's rough. That is a long time. So when Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there, been in that condition a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Rise, take up your bed and walk." And immediately he was made whole. He was made well, took up his bed and walked. And that day was the Sabbath. The Jews therefore said to him who was cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your bed." We're going to have a few of these Sabbath things that where he gets into the fracas with the Jews. So this is going to be a recurring problem here. So Jesus saw him lying there. He knew he'd been there already a long time. And he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" Now, what kind of a question is that? Man's been lying out here by the pool of Bethesda for 38 years. And why do you suppose he was out by the pool of Bethesda? Unfortunately, the man was, had wits enough about him not to answer with some kind of sarcastic answer. "No, I'm just laying here to get a suntan or something, or no, it's the best beach in town." No, nothing like that, which is good. wouldn't it be, you don't say that kind of thing to Jesus. I think even, people that maybe didn't recognize who he was, I think recognize you don't say that kind of thing to Jesus. But why would you ask a question like that? Shouldn't it be obvious he wants to be made well? He's laying out by the pool of Bethesda. Well, I don't know exactly why Jesus asked him that, but a couple of thoughts come to mind. And you could probably think of some things too, and probably have. Just as an aside, Leon and I think Mary listens to it too. There's a website that we're following that has a Through the Bible in a Year reading program, or listening, because they've got it on there where you can click and you can listen to that day's selection. And the guy that set it up did it, it's like chronological order. So you do like the first few chapters of Genesis, and then you do Job. And then you do more, you go back to Genesis and so forth. And so now we're kind of in Jeremiah and some of Chronicles and Kings and 2nd Chronicles, 2nd Kings, and also a little bit of Daniel and that kind of part. So anyway, and then after you listen to the Bible selection, the guy that set it up, it has a little clip that you can listen to of him teaching through that section. And it really kind of adds something to the reading of the scripture, just to,